Okay, hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. This is actually a session, a Q&A session together with the Vaadin India Meetup Group. So if you see on my screen right now, there's a site called vaadin.com/meetup. And if you have a look at that, you can see that there's different kinds of meetup groups around the world. And we have different meetups coming up every now and then. Today we're broadcasting this together with the meetup group in India. It's actually in two different locations in India, so we have two locations joining at the same time. This is something we do all the time, so if your meetup group wants to have a hang around at some time, just contact us, or if you want to create your own meetup group locally, just contact us as well. It says here on the page how to do that, and basically it's a way for you to have sessions locally in your area. But today, let's join here. We have Prajesh and Mudassar joining us live here from India. Would you guys like to say something? Nice to have you there.
Yeah, so my background on this Warden is that I basically have enterprise architect working as a PLM domain, and we started an open source PLM initiatives where we need to use an enterprise level UI. So that is what I started looking into different UI technology and came to Warden as a best place to use for an enterprise stuff. So that is my background, and as of now, I'm working as a founder for the ePLM technology, and we are focusing on the PLM domain and trying to create a open source based PLM solution.
Sounds good.
That is my background.
How long have you been using Vaadin personally? For how many years or months?
So I started looking into last year when it was started with 6, and then you are trying to convert into 7 because of some limitations. So that time I look into Warden. Meantime, I have some other technology I was looking into is like Eclipse Wrap, basically.
Yeah.
So I need some questions from you, but I will ask you that in coming down. Actually, I want to know what is the difference between Warden and Wrap, how you differentiate that stuff, basically.
Yeah. Sounds like a good question we could actually start from as well. But let's see if first Mudassar's voice can be heard here as well. We had some technical problems with microphones. I guess we can get in Mudassar and the rest of the people later when we get it working. So, Matti, do you want to start with
Eclipse Wrap?
Eclipse Wrap and Vaadin.
Comparing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are actually pretty similar technologies. They are trying to kind of solve the complexities of web development in a pretty similar manner. But Vaadin has been there for lots of time more, because Eclipse Wrap it's a very new project actually, so it's compared to Vaadin. Vaadin has been there for like 10 years or so, and we have almost 500 extensions to Vaadin, for example. So we are we are much more far there. And one thing you should know that Vaadin is also open source. So we are APAS2 licensed, so in that sense there is pretty much no difference in Eclipse Wrap and Vaadin. And one difference is also that there is a real company behind Vaadin. So in case you need some support or trainings,
yeah,
or consulting, then there is some phone number where you can call and we need help now, please help us. So that's at least something that I think it's not that easy to get with Eclipse Wrap at the moment.
But I guess, I mean, no technology is a silver bullet, so but everything has their sides in a sense.
Yeah, but Matti, I want one clear direction. Basically, I'm into looking at enterprise level things. So you know the future is with tablet, mobile, and stuff. So single source of stuff.
Yeah.
We don't want to have like multiple source code different for mobile, desktop,
Yeah.
and things. That is where I'm looking. So what is your direction in terms of Vaadin? What is direction of, okay, to solve this particular complexity? Because you know that enterprise solution like a PLM, which is used by
Exactly.
the bigger companies, they want, executives want in terms of phones, an engineer want in terms of desktop,
Yeah.
or a web. So how we can meet that point basically in the future?
Yeah.
That is my concern. Basically, I'm a server point of guy. I'm an enterprise level. I'm looking always everything in terms of enterprise.
Yeah.
So in future also. So that is where I need a direction from Vaadin or Vaadin, how they are planning to do that stage or reach that stage.
Yeah, I mean, we see it as a really big trend as well. So write once and use it on all devices, mobile, tablet, and desktop, and all browsers, and all tablets, and all mobiles as well. So basically today there are two strategies in using Vaadin. Vaadin 7.3 is really nice in forms of responsiveness and responsive web design. So you can sort of write once and have it working all over the place in all browsers and mobiles and tablets. Another thing that we're releasing later today, actually after this webinar, we are releasing Vaadin TouchKit 4, which is the mobile first strategy for Vaadin. So if you're planning to support mobile and tablet as your sort of main platform, then Vaadin TouchKit is a really good tool to do that. For instance, for the look and feel, for having it working on Windows Phone and Android and iOS, and it also, of course, works on desktops in the same way. So, so I would suggest that have a look at Vaadin TouchKit 4, coming out in 2 hours from now, roughly. So that's the newest and hottest release, support and supporting all of those devices as first. And even you can even take it as far as wrap it as native applications and so forth. But the main thing is really with Vaadin, write once, have in Java, in the same language that your backend enterprise system is working in, and have it working as web apps inside all the browser and all the devices.
Yeah, and execute it from one single place. You are executing Vaadin in the server. So that makes updating your application much easier than to try to push all the new versions to all new clients.
Yeah. Make a change in your application, everybody has the newest change. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one of the things I was looking, because basically my intention is to kind of make a simple things to move around, because you know the enterprise solution, it evolves and business changes.
Yeah.
So that is what I'm looking at. I don't want to multiple source code on that and make things. But if I make one changes, it should be reflected.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where a layer of abstraction such as Vaadin helps. That you are not coding in DOM structures and JavaScript, and if a new device comes out that supports it in some different way, you have to change your behavior. But that's sort of hidden from you as a developer behind an abstraction layer.
Yeah. And Vaadin has been there like for over 10 years now. We started at the time when there was no Ajax at all. There was no, all the UI changes needed a full page reload, like JSF needs today. But then we have added Ajax communication there, and then that's why the UIs are much more responsive nowadays.
Yeah, and you as a developer.
Then we have added Google Web Toolkit support. Now there is a full Java also for the extensions, and now recently we added also server push. So that's why that should kind of give you confidence that Vaadin is developing all the time, and also for this mobile revolution.
So one of the things I liked when I looked into Vaadin is the data binding, data model kind of stuff, which reflects, and the second was your latest one was the responsive thing. Basically, it adjusts itself. So that two things was pretty good for me that time when I looked into it. Then all this stuff in the kind of. So and a lot of other things I want to know is how you're going to support in terms of back compatibility, because you know some of the industry enterprise solutions, they use in a wide variety of browsers and stuff. So how we are planning to say that, okay, I will support at least a minimum 3 iteration or 4 iterations of a browser, of 4 versions of a browser.
Yeah, well, that's our business. We try to hide all these horrible things from web developers. So we have actually done that for ages. I have like spent, I'd say, several years of my life with, for example, IE6, which was pretty horrible thing that everybody knows who has been working with web applications. That's luckily over now because we don't support IE6 anymore in the latest Vaadin 7 versions.
But in the Vaadin 6 series, we even still today support IE6, and we just had a maintenance release last week for it. So we do support backwards, sort of even older browsers. So.
Yeah. Google Web Toolkit helps us there quite a lot because there we can make a kind of a selections very easily. For example, for IE6 we can select the different implementation for some specific UI component. So if IE6 needs some specific hacks, then we can serve a different version to IE6, and for modern browsers we can still use the modern technologies and things can like feel like a very good or modern
and this is, as Matti said, this is our core business. So supporting a lot of different platforms, a lot of different devices, a lot of different application servers, a lot of different browsers. So we have very rigorous testing going on. Every night we run tests, screenshot-based tests, comparing that everything works in the same way in all of these platforms, all application servers, on all browsers in the same way. So that's our main business. That's the main value of Vaadin, actually.
So why this question came up, because when we were doing this stuff, one of our client, they actually uses now Windows XP, and they have a tool which is kind of a render graphics, and it is using like old browser, old stuff. They are not able to move that. Then if I say my enterprise solution cannot fit into that, is a negative for me. That's why this question came up, because when I do like my decisions on each layer, I need to make sure that I'm taking the right direction, and it means, the end goal is that I don't want to get my software absoluted in every 6 months. If I create some software, it should be long lasting.
Absolutely.
That is my intention.
Yeah.
That's what my idea.
Absolutely. I think you have selected the right tool in that case. Vaadin applications are very long living, many years. So 5 to 10 years, at least 5-year applications. So it's very long living.
So that is one of the concerns even now people have. Why? Because the browser is more of this. So how you make sure that it won't lose that capability maybe after 10 years, because it's an enterprise application.
Yeah.
It's kind of, if I say my PLM solution, which is used by Airbus or Boeing, their product lifecycle itself is more than 10 years.
Yeah, I understand you fully. I think you have a safe choice in Vaadin in that sense. I think Matti wanted to show something as well.
Yeah, if you want to check out the supported browsers, you can go to vaadin.com/features and you will get this page. And this page is of course for the latest version, the Vaadin 7 version. So here IE6 is no more supported, so you need Internet Explorer 8 if you want to use the latest and greatest Vaadin 7. But still, if you have this kind of legacy systems where you absolutely necessarily need to support IE6, then just choose the Vaadin 6 and build your application with that. Later on, when you need to upgrade to Vaadin 7, there are just a couple of places in the application initialization mostly where you need to make some changes, and then you can move on to Vaadin 7. So in that case, you just update the Vaadin library, make some changes to kind of use the new API, and then you are done. Then you have all the goodies of the new version of Vaadin.
And Matti, since others are not there, I have one simple question. Whether Vaadin can be a kind of an OSGI where I can have multiple versions of this, put it in some place and use it. So that, say, maybe I will use 7.3, which suppose now 7, 8 or 9 version of this. And later on down the line, I say I got another 8.5 version of Vaadin. my system can use both services as an OSJ way? I'm just asking this. It's kind of a simple question, but I'm asking that whether that is possible.
It's probably impossible to answer what 8.5 will look like. Nobody has an idea today what 8.5 looks like. Vaadin's manifest files, I mean, support bundling them as OSGI bundles. But yes, in theory, I know of customer cases where we have applications where the Vaadin version is different in the sense that the widgets they have are different. So there might be a one UI where there is a checkbox and another UI where there is a iPhone-like on-off switch and stuff like this. If there really is a reason to have one application that supports both 7.5 and 8.5, I have a hard time seeing what that could be, but I don't really know how to answer.
Yeah.
No, Matti, this is the question basically. What happens is that my UI supports on sex and say my other application, because this enterprise application is kind of a service based. Now, I started using it, and some people want to use in the cloud platform. I can say that, okay, you are not ready to upgrade, use the old one. I don't find it. I don't have any issue with that. But I would say the other person, other JVM level, I would say that, okay, you are ready to upgrade. Okay, you have these new features, use it. So I don't want to touch the other old one, and I want to go for a new one. This is the concept came up basically. So I can keep a version specific level or upgrade feature specific level. It's kind of an independent basically.
Yeah. Usually, if you have a well modularized application, then you can reuse most of your backend logic, of course, with different versions of UIs that are, some of them are built with newer version and some a bit older.
So that is what I basically, once my system is up, and most of these enterprise solutions are spine of the company, and the downtime should be very minimal, and the changes should be like on demand based.
Yeah.
So that is this complexity comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Understand very well. Now we have Mudassar joining as well. Excellent. Now we can see you. Did you have some live questions from your end as well? Did you get your microphone working or sound working from there? No? In that case, I mean, we have some pre-made questions that you submitted beforehand. So we could probably, like this. Can you check that they can see my questions from your Hangout?
Yes.
Yes.
They can see them.
Excellent. So we had quite many questions at the sign up. So let's start with the first ones and let's see how far we get. We have a lot of questions here. The first one is, I have one question. Since everything in Vaadin is done on the server side, the session size is going to grow and the client, the browser, is going to get very chatty with the server. So my question is, how does it scale when compared to an application developed with, let's say, Spring MVC and some JavaScript frameworks such as Angular or just plain Jquery? Special hardware needed compared to other technologies.
I'd say this is a kind of a common scare from evaluators of Warden, that it's going to be very chatty, the communication, or it will be using lots of memory on the server side. But actually, chatty doesn't mean it's not that big harm actually in modern web applications, especially now that we have WebSocket communication. The actual HTTP request is very light, or it's not even an HTTP request anymore, but it's just sending something to the WebSocket and getting the response. It might actually improve your scalability in some way, because you will be sending very, very little in the wire. And also with just normal AJAX request with Vaadin, those messages, they are very small.
They are basically the deltas between the changes in the UI. So it's very, very optimized, the communication protocol.
So I wouldn't be scared of this chatty thing. And I think it's not not that much more chatty than with any other
It's actually
modern web application. All modern web applications are pretty much nowadays Ajax based somehow, and they will be sending lots of messages. And Vaadin has been we have had a long history in optimizing this. There is actually, if you have a normal form and you are not doing anything special, there will be nothing sent to the server when you are filling in those fields until you actually click the save button or send or whatever. So all those changes are actually saved in the client's memory until some action that is actually doing something in the server, and then those are sent in a one.
Exactly in the same way as you would do by hand with, for instance, Angular or jQuery.
Yeah.
Except that now the communication protocol, the messages are even more optimized because you don't have to do it by hand.
Yeah.
There was a couple of years ago, there was a blog post or a study by a company, I think it was in Switzerland, who were evaluating Vaadin versus Gwt, previous Google Web Toolkit, and they compared the chattiness between the two solutions. And in order to do, the end result was that Vaadin was less chatty than compared to doing it by hand. But in order to get it as little chatty as Vaadin was by default, you would have had to done a lot of optimization by hand, which you don't have to do today with Vaadin. So at the end of the day, it's quite easy to try it out. Go to demo.vaadin.com, open the developer toolbar, see what is sent over the wire. The initial load is the main thing, so when you have that compressed, it's very small widget set that is loaded inside the web browser, and after that the communication between the browser and the server is very, very little. So you can go and try it out, click on some buttons, change the menus in some of the demos that are made with Vaadin, and try it out yourself. You will see how few bytes actually go over the wire.
Yeah, and about the session size, still, of course, there is something in the session in Vaadin.
Yeah.
It's not stateless. It's not trying to be stateless, and that's where its power kind of comes from. And about the actual size of the session, that depends on how you are actually using it. And it's in the, well, JSF, for example, it saves something in the session as well. It's pretty much in par with JSF, so you really shouldn't be scared of this. We have done lots of big scalable applications. If you really are scared of it, try to first test it and see.
It's quite easy to calculate it as well. You know how big the session size is for your application. Let's say it's 200 kilobytes maximum, and you know that how many concurrent users you're going to have. Let's say 1,000 concurrent users. 1,000 times 200 kilobytes is not any memory at all in today's world. It's running on my mobile phone even. So
yeah, it's pretty easy to measure it by profiling. Just put some load with some load testing tool to your application, then hook a Java profiler to your server and see how the session, what's actually reference from the session and what's the actual size that the session uses there.
For some more info, a couple of weeks ago we did together with Red Hat, we did a scalability study with push notifications, and that's sort of
push communication.
Push
and especially
WebSockets, yeah. So which is a new way of doing it, and as such a very interesting sort of academic study that we did with a real use case, and in that case we got, how many concurrent users did we get with push on per server?
Per server, I think the maximum limit, it was limited by Mac OS X actually, because we were just not able to configure the maximum number of file descriptors.
But even in that case, the max was how much?
It was something like 10,000, I think, per server.
10,000 users at the same, and the server is an iMac in this case, so it's not even a real server.
Yeah, but the kind of the maximum was limited by using WebSockets, not because of using Vaadin or the session size.
Yeah.
So it's probably you will hit some other bottleneck when you think of scalability of Vaadin. You will hit the database, that's usually the first one, and you will,
But of course, there are bad ways of using Vaadin, such as any technology. If you save your entire database in the session, then of course it will create a really large session for you, and in that case, it's not scalable after that anymore. Okay, let's move to the next question. We are always facing a problem with backward compatibility, and also the widget sets are developed for specific versions. How do we resolve such things? Maybe just as background, Vaadin's sort of client side, the thing running inside the browser, that's called the widget set. That is basically the widgets or the components that your application is going to use.
And a thin terminal that communicates with the server side, but you don't normally need to kind of
even know about it.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. But basically the question here is that whenever you update Vaadin version, you need a new widget set, and how do you maintain backwards compatibility with that? And the short answer is that we do that for you. The long answer is that if you have custom-made components that you've done yourself, then of course you have to compile that and see that they work as well.
Yeah, but I think this shouldn't be an issue. I think if there are issues with this kind of thing, then it must be that there is something wrong in the build. Each time you update either add-ons or the Vaadin framework itself, you will need to do a clean build. You will need to kind of rebuild the widget set, and that should be enough. Warden and Google Web Toolkit, which we are using there in the client side, should do the update. It should clear all the browser cases pretty okay. But I think this question actually sounds that there is something wrong in the build. So make sure that in the build, when you make, for example, if you're using Maven, when you do Maven clean, make sure that also the widget set directory is also deleted. If you're using our Maven archetypes, for example, then this should be handled automatically. So check out for example, our Maven archetypes, what they do by default, and modify your own build to kind of do the same thing.
Yeah. For those who are not familiar with this and not familiar with Vaadin, forget about the question.
Yeah, this is pretty advanced. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to use different third-party themes in my Vaadin project. For instance, example Bootstrap CSS. Is there a way to achieve this?
Yes, there is. But of course, Vaadin components, they have their own selectors, they're all own class names. So probably if you want to, for example, adapt Bootstrap CSS to your application, you will need to do some manual work, of course. Or then you will need to assign the class names to components that they are using there. But also, probably you might not have equal DOM structure, so you will also need to do some other things. But Fredrik is now showing the new Valo theme, and I think
this is probably the easiest way to theme your applications today. So in 7.3, which was released a couple of weeks ago, we introduced a new Vaadin theme engine, which is basically built on Sass. So with this, with just a few variables and parameters, you're able to change the look and feel of all your components. So you can change the roundness of your components without having to do the CSS yourself. You can just say to the variable how round you want your components to be, how flat you want them to be, what color scheme you want them to be, and so forth.
The best thing that I like in this new Valo theme is the defaults. Actually, now you can see on the screen that actually the defaults are pretty much like in Twitter Bootstrap CSS, so components actually look pretty modern at the moment. So this is very kind of a trendy theme today, but there are trends that change, and probably not in 2 years anymore. But I think Valo will be still there, but we will just have a different kind of defaults.
Absolutely. And already today there are different kinds of versions of the theme itself. So you can go here to vaadin.com/VALO and try out what the Facebook theme looks like and so forth.
But these are actually just an examples of different variations. So you probably want to use your own values there for the Sass compiler, and then get your application look like your company's application.
Yeah. Go ahead. Ask.
Matti, this is Valo is the new theme, right? The responsive kind of theme you introduced, right?
Yes.
Based on Sass. and the variables, right?
Yes.
So you declare the variables, it automatically take that in your Lambda theme.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it's easiest to just go out to this website and then try it out yourself. There's links to the API documentation down here, so you can go and have a look at how to use this in practice.
Okay.
Yes, let's go back to the questions. So basically, it's really easy to theme Vaadin applications. You don't even have to use Twitter Bootstrap for it.
And especially you can kind of outsource that to someone who really likes to do CSS. So,
Exactly.
So it's standard CSS or Sass if you want,
yeah.
And that's it.
So you can really easily separate the design team from the sort of engineering team in this.
Yeah. This was actually already kind of
this is the same
questioned, but I could still say to this that there are a couple of studies that we have done. First off, like 3 years ago, we had this. What was the name?
Quick tickets.
Quick tickets. Was it quick tickets? Yes. Quick tickets was this. I think you can still find
scalability.
We made an example application that kind of simulated buying movie tickets. And there in the scalability study, we wanted to sell all the movie tickets in the world in all movie theaters. And we only need something like 3 servers to keep the responsiveness very low. So yes, it scales.
Our responsiveness really high.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So if you search for Warden and scalability, you'll find different studies on it. Really
but
easy.
of course, making scalable application is not that easy as making non-scalable application. If you have less users, then you don't need to think about scalability that much.
Yeah.
But we actually had with Arun Gupta a webinar here like 2 weeks ago, and there we discussed lots of things that you should consider when you need to do very scalable application. And then there we, as a kind of a side track there, we also made exercise with WebSocket communication and how that affects your scalability. So check out that webinar, and there will be some blog post also about this subject because of that webinar soon.
Yeah.
So keep following up blog on this one, but it scales pretty easily.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is that Vaadin applications with one server being an Amazon EC2 large instance, for instance, is scales to 10,000 concurrent users really well. If you need 100,000 users at the same time, just use 10 different servers or 15 different servers. So if you have 10,000 concurrent users, that's a lot of users using at the same time. If you have 100,000 concurrent users, you probably have 10 million users in your system in total. So it's a lot of users if you're really thinking of that amount of people. So, and Vaadin scales really well to that. Next question. We had a question asked in the forum thread here previously. I'll actually open this up.
I actually answered to this question, but you could still show it in the forum.
Yeah. Let's just see if this opens up.
Okay.
Now it's there.
Yeah, I think in this case there is a small bug in Vaadin. That was the final resolution of this thread. There was a couple of answers there and nobody really knew exactly, but I think it's pretty clear that there is a small bug in data binding, or in certain case of data binding when you actually haven't bound the data yet, but you have just presented the fields that this is the way it should be bound. And if you have any bugs, not just this one or anything, please fill them here to our dev.vaadin.com. That's an address that we are using to track bugs. So fill a bug report there, first sign up there, and then you can create a new ticket and follow that.
There's also instructions for it on the community contribute page. So reporting issues, submit a ticket, and so forth. So.
Yeah, and before you submit the ticket, please first search the track. See if the bug has already been reported. But if it's there, you can comment there that I'm facing this issue too. Then it will probably raise its priority in our R&D team.
Definitely will.
And also, if you have our pro support customers, then you can also kind of click the help me fast please button there. We have a bug fix prioritization, so you can just select the issue that you feel very important at the moment, and then it will be lifted up in the priority list.
Yeah, fixed before the rest of the queue, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay. Next question: how can I make my look and feel very dynamic like Jquery in Vaadin?
Well, isn't it already? But I think this is meaning some kind of effects or.
Yes. So of course you can use the same kind of effects. It's basically CSS transformations or whatever.
Yeah, CSS or with JavaScript or anything.
Yeah.
I think this is meaning something like that. I think we have quite a lot of. Well, yeah, in our sampler also there are some effects nowadays implemented. Yeah. So you can use them in a pretty same way and implement them in a pretty same way with any other web applications.
Yeah. So
I think these are mostly built with Qt and CSS transformations.
So the main thing is that Vaadin components out of the box are already pretty sort of fancy and eye candy, but
they are mostly designed for business applications. So there is kind of no extra bells and whistles there.
Yeah, except for the ones that are in the directory. So there's lots of different add-ons in the directory that you can try out that the community has generated.
There is an animator, I think.
Animator add-on, and then there's sort of ready-made components such as my favorite paper stack.
Ah, this is cool.
So this is a nice widget where, let's see if the online demo is actually online. Yes. So here you can just drag to another layout like this, like in a paper stack, and see how it works. So from one layout to another one, and this is all HTML5 based, so there's no Flash or anything built in. So, but it's really flashy anyway. So
yeah.
Yes. Next one. In my application, I'm sending through mail one link to a user in case he forgot his password, and the user needs to click on that link to set the new password. But what is happening is that when I click the link, then it redirects to my first login view instead of forgotten password view. In my application, I have created one UI class, and in this class I have registered all my views and default redirect to login view.
I think we could actually now look a bit about
Let's jump into some code finally.
Yes.
So if we switch to Matti's screen,
we will tackle quite a lot of.
Let's see it like this.
Questions actually. Somebody asked about NetBeans and how you should use Warden with NetBeans. With NetBeans we have Warden plugin, which is actually pretty much wrapper for some Maven builds.
And so also if you're using Eclipse or IntelliJ, it's the same thing. There's plugins for both of those as well. So.
Yeah. So if you want to make this kind of modern way to kind of regenerate a new password for you by email verification, you will need to read something from the URL. So you will need to make some kind of secret that you send within email to your end user, and when he clicks it, he will have possibility to add new password probably. So I created a new Vaadin project here, and there in the stub we have the init method. So this method is called when the first page is loaded. When user opens the
application or the URL or URI.
Yeah. Yeah. And here, if you put the secret to your request, you can directly read it from the request that is passed as a parameter for the init method. So get context path. This is probably the thing. No, actually. Path info. So context path is the path where your application is deployed, and then the path info is the rest of the URL. So if you would have my app.com/recover and then my secret and then some secret value here, then we could read this my secret and the secret value from the path info variable here.
And then redirect the UI to a
Yeah.
different UI.
Or you can just build the UI here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also there is another possibility. You can also use the URL fragment. So the part which is actually by normal web frameworks never communicated to the server side. So you could have your secret here as well. And read that as well with Vaadin, because Vaadin actually communicates also this value to the server side. But there you will need to use, is it page get current and then get fragment, I think. Get URI fragment. So there are two very good possibilities to kind of use as a foundation for this kind of solution.
Yeah. I think that answers that question. Then next question about Spring and Vaadin 7 combination. Order wiring objects. Can you please explain me Spring plus Vaadin combination using one sample example?
Yes, we can do that. But I will just show you the URL, github.com Petter Holmström and Vaadin for Spring. This is actually not that old project, but it started by Josh Long from Pivotal and our kind of best Spring expert here in Vaadin, Petter Holmström. And this is definitely the library that you want to use nowadays with Vaadin and Spring.
It's called Vaadin for Spring,
Yes.
so, and it's on GitHub. So just
Yeah.
Google for Vaadin for Spring.
And the number there.
Yeah, the number 4.
Number 4 there in the Vaadin for Spring. You could also check out our YouTube pages, YouTube and Vaadin official. Vaadin official, is it so?
Yeah.
And there you should see one webinar that we had in the spring about Spring.
Yes. I think again, Google for Vaadin Spring YouTube, and you will find it as your first hit.
There is some pretty good stuff about Vaadin and Spring.
Yeah, no need to do it by hand. So this, we assume that the person asking this question was trying to do it by hand. There's an add-on for that, so use that instead.
Yeah, you can do it by hand as well, but it will not be that simple because by default, the Vaadin UI, it's not Spring managed bean, but you need to make it somehow Spring managed bean, and then you can just use the auto-wired annotation and get your services there.
Yeah. Last question, I think we already answered in this person's question. So how to get the complete URI, including the hash bang at the end as well. So
Exactly
Matti
that.
already showed that. Okay, how to use Vaadin in NetBeans IDE effectively, and what are the form requests and actions?
Form request and action, what are those? Well, you don't need those with Vaadin because you will be working with your components. So most often you will not be submitting any form in sense of web development. So you will not declare your forms anywhere in actual HTML, and you will not think about input elements at all. They will just happen. Use our components, use Vaadin component or API called field group.
Should we give a short example of a really simple Vaadin application, what the source code looks like, or what it looks like in action for people who are not familiar with Vaadin at all from before?
Yeah, actually I have here Java EE example. This is not Spring example, but there I have a simple backend here. So this is actually not using JPA now, but most probably in real applications you will have a pretty similar looking application which is actually connecting to some entity manager. For example, you could have, you will inject your persistency context there and then have a service class that actually doing all the JPA stuff there. And then in the Vaadin UI, you will probably just, if you are using Spring, then you will just auto-wire it here. But if you are using Java EE, then you just use inject or AGB here and inject the service and then just use it. So for example, in this application, I could actually deploy this to see what it looks like now, so it's maybe easier to follow what we are doing in this simple application. So we have a simple phone book application that has a filtering. You can select items for editing, you can modify the name, then click save, add new stuff and things like that. So that's a bit like a typical Vaadin application, or typical very small Vaadin application. And here's the actual Vaadin code. So this is actually where I think the real power of Vaadin comes from, because you are very close to your data, you have the service there, and in the UI code you can directly connect to the service. For example, we are listing the entries in this entry list, which is a Vaadin component, which is this one, this table. This is our entry list. And we just set the beans from the service. We make some query there. This is probably, I don't remember about this application, but I think this filter is the value that we put here. So if we type Anna here, okay, case sensitive, it filters out everything else. So in Vaadin UI code, you can directly use your Java services.
Yeah. And for the person asking the question, there is no HTML writing, any HTML templates or anything like that. It's just this Java code.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't remember we were talking about form. How to build a form. This is a kind of quite typical form that I always make. I just introduce those Vaadin fields here. Then I just add them to Vaadin layouts. And that's it. After that, we are just using Vaadin field group and then bind the entity that we get from the backend. So there is probably in the UI class, here we have somewhere this entry list. We probably have a value change listener for this there. And here in the value change listener, we just get the entity that was clicked and set it to the form. So we make the form visible and then bind it there. This is actually some utility that's behind the scenes using Vaadin field group, and there it sets the bean to the utility class, and that's it. So you don't need to think about any like web forms at all. It's much easier to do it there.
Yeah. And for those new to Vaadin, please check out vaadin.com/introduction. There you get a basic idea of how
Vaadin works behind the scenes.
Exactly. And also, I mean, this is the entire source code here in order to create this application, which basically is text field and a button and a notification based on the greeting. So there is no HTML writing, any form submitting, HTML form submitting or anything in this application. This is the only coding that you do.
It will be as simple as working with normal desktop applications with, for example, Swing.
Yeah. Okie dokie, let's move forward. Next questions. What is the future plan and roadmap? So let's have a look at that. Actually, it's a good time to ask this question because we just updated the roadmap yesterday. So the roadmap for Vaadin is public, and you can always have a look at it at vaadin.com/roadmap, or you can find it in the menu here under Learn and Roadmap. There's Vaadin 7.4 is the next version coming up. Main features being a new super fast and efficient grid component.
So that will be replacing this table. This is the old table that we have been using for ages, and that will be now even better than before.
And the estimated schedule for that is that there's a beta coming out in December this year. After that, we're working on Vaadin 8 as well. So doing even more sort of modern web browser features. So supporting new things and other things coming up. Vaadin Test Bench, as I said today, in a couple of hours, Vaadin TouchKit 4 is coming out. Vaadin CDI just had a beta today, I guess.
Yeah, but I actually also used it in this application, and we have been using that add-on for ages in our own projects. So that's really the thing that you will want to use if you want to use Vaadin in Java EE.
Yeah, and Vaadin Charts is the next version after that. Is also in the works, and then Spreadsheet is also in the works. But you can always have a look at the roadmap here and see where we're going and what's happening at the moment.
Yep, we're pretty much working as a kind of an open source project. So
yeah, so you can even have a look at dev.vaadin.com and see the timeline here and see who has been working on what and submitting what today and so forth.
If you are active on our feature request, for example, to the truck, or being active on the forum, you can pretty much affect our roadmap.
Yeah,
we will listen to our customers and make the things that you will actually need.
Absolutely. Next question. Is Vaadin for developers, free for developers? Yes, absolutely. Vaadin is Apache 2 licensed, so completely free to use, not only for developers, but managers or deploying the application or selling it or whatever you want to do. It's completely free of charge always. So Apache 2 is the most liberal license there is. So just use it. There's no hooks, nothing that sort of comes and hits you back. So completely free to use.
Yeah. It's more open source than GPL.
Yes,
that's what I usually like to say.
So absolutely free to try, free to use in production, free to sell your product, free to do whatever you want to do with it,
and free to publish your source code if you want, but you don't have to.
Yeah, there's no hooks. You don't have to publish your source code or anything like that.
Like with GPL.
Yeah. Next question. I would like to know the support extended to incorporate Spring and NoSQL database like MongoDB along with Vaadin.
I think we already covered the Spring, but NoSQL not that much. But I actually have quite good blog post about the subject. It's not MongoDB specifically, but it was
Neo4j.
Neo4j Vaadin Spring data. Spring data. Check out our blog from somewhere last spring or something. There is a quite nice example. I hadn't used this Neo4j beforehand, but I really liked the concept. So it might be much better than normal JPA in some certain cases.
Yeah.
There's an example application of NoSQL usage in Vaadin application.
Yeah. But that's a really nice project to start from. There's a link at the bottom to actually the example project inside GitHub.
Example projects are usually in GitHub. So
then about performance testing, is it possible to use JMeter with Vaadin 7 applications that use push, i.e. WebSockets? This question is because JMeter proxies the requests to the application server running the Vaadin application.
Yes, sounds very familiar because I was just working with this like a couple of weeks ago. There is actually one plugin that you can use with JMeter, but it wasn't that. I didn't like that much either. So we took a different kind of load testing tool, which is called Gatlin. It's not as old as JMeter, but it's actually very powerful, especially with WebSocket. It has very good WebSocket support, and they are just releasing the version 2 where they work very well. And it's proven to work with Warden, and we are actually, right at this moment, we are preparing some technical articles how you can easily use Gatlin with Warden. So again, follow our blog. It will, within 2 weeks, there will be something about using Gatlin and Vaadin there together.
But so short answer is
probably, but it's tricky.
And it requires some plugin at the moment for JMeter.
Yeah, use Gatlin. That's my suggestion at the moment.
We have a lot of questions still, and we we've already sat here for almost an hour, so let's speed this up. And the questions that we've gotten a lot of questions even after this, so we won't have time to go through all of them. But does either one of you there locally have any questions that you would like to ask now that we haven't answered yet? Just speak out loud and we will take your questions at any time. Okay, otherwise we take the next question. It is observed that Vaadin 7 uses synchronized request handler class to handle requests. Apparently multiple requests within the same session seem to be handled synchronously. Is it possible for Vaadin 7 application to process multiple requests for the same session in parallel? If yes, what is the modus operandi to enable this in Vaadin 7?
I think there is no kind of built-in way to drop that feature, because that feature is there for a reason. Because you will not want to have multiple requests doing modifications to UI classes at the same time. You will face some synchronization issues and your application will just be broken down.
Especially because some change probably affects some other part, and
yes,
and then if you get a lot of merging issues that just don't merge.
I would evaluate the real need to not using this synchronized request handler, because I think it should be possible to kind of live with that. Because you can disable that probably, but you will have to do it. You have to build your own custom version of Vaadin, but I really wouldn't do that.
Okay, I want to know how this framework will be more easy than building UI in JSP.
Well,
1,000 times easier, that is the answer.
Yeah.
Basically, if you build JSP, you're building a HTML page with JavaScript with some embedded Java code. In Vaadin, everything is 100% Java. So you have everything in the same language instead of having HTML, JavaScript, and Java sort of mishmashed together. And this way it makes a lot easier to refactor the code, a lot easier to understand what's going on in the code, a lot easier for a new guy to come in and make some changes in the code.
Yeah, I think the main point is that you don't need to make a context switch from the Java world to some web
HTML world.
Yeah, because JSP is very low level. You will be making HTML pages. You will need to make HTML forms. You will need to make handlers on the server side that react to some query parameters or post payloads. With Vaadin, things just happen. So with JSP, writing a very simple thing like this kind of hello world application that responds to click would need some session handling. Then it would need some reading some query parameters, introducing lots of HTML elements and things like that.
Yeah, so if you, for instance, have a look at this table component. The table component here automatically sortable, automatically lazy loading, so it doesn't push everything inside the browser at once. You can drag around columns and stuff like this. And imagine doing this in JSP, basically JavaScript and HTML yourself. It's gonna be like thousands of lines of code. Trust me. Here, this is all you do. You create a new table component, then you tweak some parameters. You set size full, set selectable, which means that now I can go and select stuff here.
Yeah, this example actually has quite a lot of code.
A lot of features, that you probably don't need. For instance, like right-click buttoning for context menus and stuff, like multi-selecting things and stuff like this. But even multi-selecting is just turning it true, and that's all you have to do in order to get this done.
Yeah.
Column reordering allowed just means that if I close this, I can reorder the columns in different orders and stuff like this. So a lots of saved lines of code when you use Vaadin instead of JSP.
Yeah, you will probably get much richer user experience with this.
Yeah. Let's run through the rest of the question again. how Vaadin meets security? Vaadin is secure by default because it's running on the server side. But for the longer answer, please see vaadin.com/security. Here we run through the OWASP application security projects checklist and see what it is. And there's also a nice webinar about the issue here. How we handle cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, and stuff like this.
Yeah.
What is handled by the framework and what is not.
Yeah. So basically, Vaadin handles the security for you.
Yeah.
Of course, you can still do stupid things with Vaadin, but Vaadin kind of exposes much less ground for attacks than typical modern web application with REST services and JavaScript clients and stuff like that.
What kind of applications are built with Vaadin? I think we'll actually end this with, this can be the last question. I will answer it by showing you where you can find the answers yourselves. So vaadin.com/demo. Here you can find the quick tickets demo dashboard application, and this one showcases sort of typical applications that are built with Vaadin. So there's some kind of dashboard, some kind of company internal applications where you want to show millions of rows of data and be able to analyze it in a really graphical way. Maybe you want to be able to create some kind of reports or give your end users who might be creating some reports the possibility to create them on the fly themselves, and really rich components that just behave snappily and look good.
Yeah. But this is just a UI mockup, so now the real applications.
The real applications, yes. If you go and have a look at these, you can see who is using Vaadin and sort of success stories of companies who are using Vaadin with not only sort of screenshots or not only logos in the cloud. You can actually go and click on these logos and see what kind of application they've made, why they decided to go with Vaadin, and what the benefits they felt that were with Vaadin. Besides the demos, please also check out the Learn section. Here you can see what is Vaadin, why should I use it, how does Vaadin work under the hood, how do I use Vaadin, and then there's a tutorial as well, so you can actually create this application. You can see how it's created. Here's the entire source code for creating this application, so you can try it out for yourself. And as a final point, when you've started using Vaadin,
and you had questions that we didn't have time to answer.
Yes, go into the forum. You can find this event under events, India Meetup Group Q&A session. I will not start the video because there will be a crazy loop. And I can see that you've already posted tons of questions here. Whoa, this is awesome. Thank you, guys.
But actually, I think it's not that awesome because I'd like to have all of these questions as a separate threads.
Maybe, but we'll try to answer them anyway here and post you to different threads and places.
But if you don't get a reply in this thread, create a new thread and answer it there in the main discussion section.
Yeah, so Vaadin forum and just see where general discussion maybe or general help. So
yeah, or UI components if it's belonging to some specific UI component.
Yeah, so just post the questions there. We'll try to go through them as soon as possible and answer your questions. So. And the community, of course, also answers. I'm sure some of the questions that you asked are already answered by some other guys in the community.
Yeah, and if you have a question, then first search the forum. There, the answer might be there already.
How to get started with Vaadin? Basically, depends on what you use. If you use Eclipse, then if you search in the Eclipse marketplace for Vaadin, you will find the Vaadin add-on for Eclipse. With NetBeans, same thing, an add-on, and with IntelliJ, there's an add-on, or then just use Maven directly too. Yeah,
you don't need to have any IDE integrations if you use Vaadin. Vaadin is basically just a Java library, but there are some handy add-ons.
Yeah, you can use VI or Emacs if you want to as well. And as a final thing, as an introduction to you who joined the webinar, there's a campaign code called Intro Tools for the Pro Tools. So if you haven't checked out the Pro Tools is basically Vaadin charts in order to create snappy and good-looking charts. Vaadin TouchKit, which is coming out today, TouchKit 4 for mobile optimized UI, sort of mobile-first strategy, and Vaadin Test Bench, which is Selenium on steroids for testing your web-based Vaadin applications, and also spreadsheet coming up soon. So use the intro tools code. We will email it to all of you who signed up as well, so you will get it from there. It gives you 3 months free on a 12-month subscription, so just try it out. It's a really easy way to get started with those as well. You don't need that. Just get started with Vaadin itself. Go to vaadin.com/download and start there. Any final questions or thoughts from the live audience? This was the first session we had together with India Meetup Group. I hope we can have more. There's 2 guys driving the India Meetup Group, and you can always find it online. So if you go to vaadin.com/meetup and then you click on India here, it goes to meetup.com/VaadinIndia, and here you can see upcoming events and have discussions together, and I hope you can make India Vaadin as vibrant as the Vaadin India discussion channels are otherwise as well. So thank you all. I think this is it.
Yep, I think so. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.